Thanks, Jove, for the introduction. So I don't have to introduce myself. If you want to kind of read up what it says about me on Twitter as well, you can find me basically everywhere under the handle Futurama. Yeah, like Futurama, but with two N's. It's kind of my nickname everywhere. So what am I going to talk about today? I'd like to kind of talk to you how you could test a Redux store. And I don't know, how many of you do work with Redux? Oh my God, I love it. That makes my job really easy because that kind of means you have quite a knowledge here. Okay, so before we go and see how we can test a Redux store, I'm gonna give a little bit of context what Redux actually is and how it works. So Redux is the implementation is a library which implements the flux pattern. And the flux pattern is an application architecture which enforces unidirectional data flow. And that data is called state. And within the whole pattern, it lives within a store. So what we can see here is a store which holds the state. And whenever an action is dispatched, it would update the state, notify all views that are listening, and then the views can themselves submit some actions to the dispatcher to update the state. That said, a Redux store is not a Flux store. A Redux store actually is a dispatcher and a store, and it offers the entire API that's needed for both of them. Dispatching an action, getting a state, listening to a state update. And because it's always a little bit more fun when you see something, in that case kittens, we're going to take a look of how Redux looks in real life. So it's possible to read it. Yeah. On the right-hand side, we have a very small application, and we got lots of kitten images. And on the left-hand side, you can see the Redux Dev Tools. That's a Chrome plugin, and it's really helpful. So if you work with Redux, make sure you have it installed. It helps you. And what you see here is our current state. We only have two values, which is fetching false and a list of images. And there is one action that has been dispatched to initialize our store. That action is dispatched by Redux. We don't do anything. That just happens. But, however, our view can also dispatch actions. So when we click Load Images, we have one action that's dispatched. It's called Fetch Kittens. Okay, yeah, we have kittens now. That's true. Okay, take a look there. My favorite one right now is that one. Yeah, it changes because it's like, it's using the Flickr API, so the images change, but today that's my favorite one. So back to our actions. The first action that was dispatched, and when we actually saw that kind of a loading animation, was Fetch Kittens. Fetch Kittens was just set is fetching state is fetching to true. We still got no images. But whenever our request is done and we get the image URLs from the server, there is a second action dispatch, which is called Fetch Kittens. And that again would update our state from is fetching true to false, and it would set the images from the payload. So every action does not only have a type, but it can also have a payload. And we have seen all the state transitions and everything that we're gonna test today. So I'm gonna jump back here. And the first thing we're gonna take a look at are state transitions. State transitions are done within the store and within Redux, within a so-called reducer. A reducer is a pure function which takes the current state and an action and returns the next state. So that's all you need for our state transactions. Keep in mind, Redux will initially submit an action with an undefined state. That's a time where you have to initialize your state. And then we only react on actions that we are interested in. So we say, okay, fetch kitten success should set is fetching to false and should set the image URLs from our action. So we would set it, we would get the payload and set it to our state. And that's kind of the nicest thing about Redux. That's damn simple and it's really straightforward. And every code that's very simple is super easy to test. And You just have to love it for that, because you can just say, okay, I can check if I have the initial state by just calling my reducer with an undefined state, or I can just dispatch the fetch kitten actions to see if fetching is true. And same with the payload. I would just dispatch my success action and would say, okay, are the image URLs correctly set from my payload? And that part about testing Redux is really nice and really straightforward. But if you remember our application, that wasn't all we did. So we did not only update our state, but somehow we also get the data from the server. And that is called a side effect. So our fetch kitten action causes a side effect. And within Redux, this is handled in a so-called middleware. And middleware is used all the time when you need some additional functionality to your store, like logging, like getting data from a server, all of this extra work that just doesn't fit with the reducer. And that lives within the middleware. Other way around, that lives within the dispatcher. So middleware lives in the dispatcher. And how it works is basically whenever an action is dispatched, it will not be automatically forwarded to the reducer, but it triggers the middleware first, and the middleware may or may not, and that's important. Some of the major libraries never forward their actions to the actual reducer. Forward that action, execute the side effect, the additional functionality that we need, and in, I would say, most likely 90% of all use cases, dispatch another action. And then it starts again. And now we're going to take a look at the fancy stuff. This is how the middleware for the example we saw looks like. And this is done with Redux Saga. And I do know there are easier ways to write that, but it's more fun to do it like that. Okay. If you take a look at the function below, it's called watch kittens fetch. And it's a so-called generator function. You can see that from the star here. And it would say, okay, I'm going to wait for every fetch kitten actions to be dispatched. And whenever that action is dispatched, I'm going to call fetch kittens from API. And that would then finally do our request. So we're going to request the data from API fetch kittens. We have to wait till it's resolved because it's async. We're going to get the JSON from that response. Again, async. That's why we have the yield here. We map the image URL and then dispatch the fetch kitten success. So now we have every functionality in place that we need for a small application. However, testing that is a little bit more annoying. Oh, it's called fetch kittens instead of fetch kittens from API. Okay. So, generator function will always stop when it hits a yield. That's just how it works. So, we can call our generator function, then say next, which would resolve the first yield. So here, it would actually submit the request. Then we're going to do it again, and we're going to resolve the JSON. I still don't know why I have to provide the context with the second next, but that's how it works, or at least that's how it works with Bubble. So basically what we say here, fetch the data, get the JSON, submit the action, verify that the action that was submit was actually that fetch kitten success action, verify that that was everything that needed to be done within that function. And now if you take a look here, it's not as trivial as it was before. So on the other hand, I would actually say we are more likely testing the middleware setup and the way the middleware needs to be written than what we want to dispatch than our business logic. And so what I wanted to do is basically the moment when I wire everything together to a store, I want to also test that together, because that just doesn't make me happy. I'm sorry. It's just as simple as that. And so I'm going to start wiring my store together. And now we have all the components in place to create that Redux store. And So we go here and say create store. We would pass our reducer. Remember, that's state transitions. We would apply our middleware, which is Saga. And then we have to do some fancy thing called Saga middleware run. That's Saga specific. Other middlewares might have force you to do stuff like that, others won't, but that's just Saga specific. And now I want to test it. More specifically, I want to test that whenever I dispatch fetch kittens, no, I'm going to do it differently. I want to test that. So I want to test that whenever I dispatch that action by clicking the button, that action is dispatched and it will update my state. And once the promise was resolved, once I get a response from the server, I also want that fetch kitten success is dispatched. And to sum that all up, this is what I want to do. I want to create a real Redux store. I want to do black box testing. I don't care which middleware is used. I really don't care. I just want to dispatch an action and verify that there have been 2 state transitions and 2 actions dispatched. And because I'm doing a request to the server, that all needs to be able to work with async. So I need to be able to test an async functionality there. I couldn't find anything like that. So about 2 or 3 months ago, we started working on chai-redux. That's a very small chai helper, which allows us to test exactly that, to just write plain, straightforward integration tests for a Redux store. And I'm going to show you, like with all the other tests, how it works. So first we're going to say chai create Redux store. So what a chai helper does is it extends your chai API. So now we have a function called create Redux store. And we pass it our reducer and our middleware. And then we dispatch an action, because create Redux store will just return a real Redux store. Yes, it is extended so that it communicates with chai, but apart from that, it's just a pure Redux store, and that's nice. Because most other libraries, they offer you a mock. They don't offer you the real thing. And then we can say, okay, expect store to have dispatched fetch kittens. So we want to verify if that exact action has been dispatched. Remember, has been dispatched in the past. So then we want also to say to have dispatch fetch kitten success. And here we don't only care for the type, but also for the payload. So we would not pass a string, but an object. And we would say fetch kitten success. Yeah, kind of nice. That will fail. And that's because by the time we are doing the assertion, we didn't get a response yet from the server. And so chai-redux will tell you, okay, within my action history, there is no action like that. What do you want from me? So what we want, instead of looking up the history, is actually we want to wait for those 2 actions to be dispatched. And what we can do is basically say, we say, expect store eventually to have dispatch fetch kittens and to have dispatch fetch kitten success. And once both actions are within our action history, we will notify our test runner that we are done. And that's it. So basically we have tested our whole functionality, very straightforward with a couple of lines of code. But we don't only want to test the actions, but we also want to test the store, the state. I'm sorry. So, oh yeah, that's true, it works. Okay, so it's the same in green. So we say store dispatch fetch kittens. Then we say expect store eventually, because we by now know it's async. To have state is fetching true and image URLs, which is the second state. And to have state like is fetching true. Note that you can do either state for a full equal or like for a partial equal. That will work. Even though the states are in the wrong order, or we are doing the assertion in the wrong order, that will work, because all we are testing is if at some point both states are reached. We're not saying in which order. That said, we could. So if we want to chain states, we can use then. So whenever we combine two assertions with then, we would actually do it in an order. So here the order matters. So we first have to check is fetching true, then is fetching false with the image URLs. And that's kind of my favorite part, because this is a very good documentation. If you write a Redux store and one of your other developers needs to write the view for it, it's often rather tricky to understand which kind of states are to expected, what will happen, and in which order. And for us, this kind of like component will receive props got a new meaning when starting to work with the flux pattern, because at some point you're really interested in those state transitions, and that's really awesome. And so we were not able to kind of like implement what our initial requirements were, but we also were very happy with it because it's very simple and it helps documenting a lot. And I hope you never have to do it. You can actually swap your middleware. So if you want to go from Saga to Thunk or the other way around, you can use that integration test to verify that you did not lose any kind of functionality. And that is really nice, because normally a middleware just explains to you how do you test that exact middleware, that exact actions, but it rarely gives you the context. So why did I do that? Okay, it's always kind of a trade-off. Do you write your own library? Do you write your chai helper or not? It was just one of the days where I kind of didn't want to write a workaround. So I kind of like found libraries to mock something, to verify state history, but I could not find one thing where I had all in combination and which would work rather straightforward. And so I decided, okay, it's time to do it myself. And then basically the obvious step was open sourcing it. Because when you write something like that, you want feedback and you want other people to find your bugs. Because it's like, if that's not really working as I expect it to work, I'm gonna have a Volkswagen test here. So that's not really what I want. So like, everybody is very welcome to take a look there, give feedback, open issues if there are any. And I would like to do the same for Chest. I mean, I don't know, maybe someone has already done something like that for Chest. Me, I kind of like did not even manage to Google how to write a Chest plugin. But if someone can explain to me how to do that, I'm very welcome to do it, because that would be awesome, to not just support one assertion library and one test runner, but two. Yeah, and that's it. You saw all of our company logo everywhere. So we are hiring. So what do? Do you see that? You see that chart? So we're doing a lot of fancy D3 stuff. And apart from that, everything is kind of React, and we are even having an isomorphic React stack. And we're pretty happy with it. So yeah, if you're interested, there is a link there. And that's it. And I'm sorry if I was too fast. Okay, any questions? Sure. Shoot.
So how does eventually fail?
The timeout of your test runner. So we're gonna manage to like get the timeout for every test runner, so it just fails with the timeout of your test runner. Yeah. I mean, my favorite thing, but we couldn't figure it out, would be that it fails like 1 millisecond before with the super fancy error message, but yeah. Yeah.
Do you have like more ways to group like assertions? Like for example, if you have an action that dispatches like multiple asynchronous actions.
They will always be in an order, so you can just combine it after each other. So just say action A, then action B, then action C. Okay. That works totally fine. Yeah.
We have a timeout, like when you say eventually, so like if you're
as I said before, we are using the timeout of the test runner.
Oh, sorry.
No, no worries. Everything's fine. Yeah, shoot.
It also support like when instead of successful outcome that there are error messages that checks that.
So in our implementations, most of the time, that's just another action. So that's very straightforward to test. So you would have one flow which tests the success flow and another test which tests the error flow. So we just saw the success because it fitted on a slide. Yeah.
Do you still test the Saga implementations of the actions, or do you just create the integration tests now with your chai-redux?
In live, we have more going on with Redux Sync. Most of them is actually still tested, yes. But just with basically us passing a dispatch spy and verifying if that was called correctly. So it's really just a unit test. So I think we have like plenty of time. So any other questions? Yeah.
Instead of working with the done callback, is there a way to kind of return a promise from the expectation? So for example, in Mocha, you can just return a promise from the test and it will resolve itself as soon as the promise resolves?
I'd like to do that. That's on my to-do list because you can basically with Mocha you can either do call done or return a promise, but I've started with done. But yeah, I would like to do that. The second thing I haven't implemented is kind of like having a reset. Because right now I have to create a store for every test, and it would be nicer to just do it before each and like do after each reset, and you're done.
Have you used Redux effects, or have you looked at this library? It's way smaller, and I think it's just working with Redux Funk.
I think I have not directly worked with effects. I've worked with Thunk, but no, I think not with effects.
We have used this library, and we've exactly written like what you have with chai-redux, but for Jasmine, some helpers around it. But the library is way smaller, but you don't have these kind of async stuff because you always wait for the outcome of a dispatch, because Redux effects work kind of differently, which lets you inspect these kind of action trees you have, but the code gets way more messy when you write the actions yourself. The tests are easy, but the actions writing is way more complicated. So
I kind of run into the same problem because I was like, when I started testing or writing integration tests, I was like, okay, actually, I can test it. I can do it. And then I looked at my production code. I was like, shit, it's 20 more line codes in my. It's like, no, not a good idea. So yeah. Yeah. Oh, one more.
Question.
Yeah.
Could you pass this store you create, like the enhanced store, could you pass it just to test components if you want to test components to pass it to the provider?
It's really a real Redux Store. It just has an additional middleware and one extension to communicate with Chai. Cool. I was too fast. I'm sorry for that.